Even in the darkest hour, we are reminded that there are thousands of points of light. The brightest of these rise up from the ashes of misery and pain like a beacon of light. They remind us of the peerless spirit of the men and women that serve in uniform. They remind them of our service and of our sacrifice. Sacrifices by men like James Miller. Many of you remember this face, Tom's photograph taken shortly after Fallujah in 2004. The photographer looked into the eyes of James Miller and he said, "What I saw was terrified, just tired, glad to be alive." That kind of service and sacrifice, we bring that home with us. We bring it home to our families. It's seated as a spirit of service. And that spirit of service that we give to our sons and daughters is critically important as we think about our national security needs in the future. The majority of the men and women that serve in uniform come from military families. So our children's own desire to serve, their own growth in that desire to serve, will either thrive or wither based upon the light or heat that we project from our own experiences. Our spirit of service is seated with our neighbors. When they come home, they're also inspired to serve. Our neighbors have served our country while we were overseas, and last year, over 64.5 million of them volunteered for America. They served 7.9 billion hours. Martin Luther King once said that everybody can be great because anyone can serve. And that kind of service is inspired as well. But when our military service ends, that spirit of service does not. Our commitment to service does not. The challenges that we face in the streets of America continue, and the leadership that we need to bring home to it also continues. Our service continues with individuals like Ken Harris, standing there with a jackhammer. Ken left the military and was homeless for 20 years. He put in his sweat equity with Habitat for Humanity. He now lives in that home in Baltimore with his family. The spirit of service continues with individuals like Neil Pointer. Neil is a Vietnam veteran. And when I got a chance to talk with Neil, I asked him why he decided to continue to serve. Neil said when he came home from Vietnam, he was less interested in a beer, and less interested in a handshake, and more interested in becoming my brother's keeper. Neil has been doing that community service for over 4 years now through AmeriCorps Vista. We serve for ourselves, for that sense of pride in our work and our achievements. That sense of pride in our work and achievements is something that we become accustomed to. It's a nourishment of our souls. Unfortunately, for some of us that come home, we don't get that nourishment. It's too much, and we can't continue. But mostly veterans serve for others. This house represents a national build in the mall that occurred last year. 5 veterans in Washington, D.C. are now housed thanks to the selfless service of veterans. This house represents hundreds of houses, thousands of houses around the country that have been built by and for veterans. It shouldn't be any surprise that communities are looking for us. They're looking to us. They want us to leverage the leadership skills that we learned overseas here in our communities at home. This community is actually a stone's throw away from my house in Fort Meade, Maryland. In 2011, over 500 volunteers built this playground for military veterans and their family members. They did it with the help of the members of their community, men and women in uniform, moms and dads, and local neighbors. They need our sense of service and our spirit of service on the home front. Many folks may recognize this image from Joplin, Missouri. When Joplin, Missouri was devastated by a tornado, hundreds of thousands of veterans descended upon Joplin. Some of them came as far away from Washington State and California. I spoke with a gentleman from the VFW that got in his van, packed it to the hilt with as much supplies as he could find, and drove from California all the way to Missouri. He brought his friends with him. That kind of selfless service is needed here at home. It's also needed beyond our borders. Hopefully folks recognize this gentleman. If not, I'd like to introduce you to him. He runs Team Rubicon. Jake Wood and Mike McNulty exemplify the sense of selfless service. They have also deployed thousands of veterans, not just in the country, but around the world to help countries recover from disasters. Resiliency that's learned in Iraq can be applied here at home. This is a picture of Tim Lovett. Tim Lovett's Humvee was blown up when he was in Iraq, and to use his own words, he was shooken around like a marble in a tin case. When Tim came home, he was struggling with post-traumatic stress, traumatic brain injury, but he was mostly focused on the loss of one of his friends overseas. He decided to turn that angst and that energy into serving fellow veterans in his community. Tim helped stand up the Veterans Leader Corps in Washington State, and today, every single public college and university in Washington State has a Veterans Corps that supports student veterans. Leadership is leveraged here in the classroom. This is Raheem Smith. He's a member of Teach for America. Raheem teaches inner-city school kids that are struggling with violence and recidivism. Raheem worked for Teach for America as an AmeriCorps member not too far from here in Brooklyn. Raheem says that when he walks in the classroom, his students are looking for two things. They're looking for leadership and they're looking for structure. Leadership can be found here. This is a hiring fair. 4 years ago, a gentleman from Hire Our Heroes by the name of Kevin Schmiegel walked in my office in the Pentagon, and he said he had an idea, a brilliant idea. He wanted to do hiring fairs all around the country to help reduce veteran unemployment. In 2011, the veteran unemployment rate was 10.6%. 740 hiring hero fairs later, thanks to the policy initiatives of folks in the federal government, public and private sector, today, our unemployment rate is 4.7%. These are pictures of my own family. The service and sacrifice that we learned is passed down from generation to generation. My own lineage goes all the way back to World War I. Every single member of my family has served in every single major conflict in the United States since World War I. That kind of commitment to service is seated in our veterans. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands of military members have similar lineages. Our military service teaches us to focus. This is Colonel retired Greg Gaxon. Greg left his legs on the battlefield. But when Greg came back, he wound up leading the largest Wounded Warrior Battalion unit in the country. Our military services teach us teamwork. Teamwork that can be learned on the hills of Colorado by veterans like Mike Brimmer. Mike Brimmer volunteered for an entire year after struggling with keeping down a job year after year after year after returning from Iraq. Mike decided to volunteer for a conservation corps and lead a team of fellow veterans fighting wildfires in the wildlands of Colorado. A year later, Mike and every single member of his team found a job. Today I'm proud to say that although Mike still struggles, he's employed full-time at the Bureau of Land Management. Mission first, people always. This is who our veterans are. This is what they can bring to our communities. The idea from President Johnson in his war on poverty when he created AmeriCorps Vista was that every American can serve. National service is service to nation. Most folks recognize this guy. I think he was just on the stage. Most people don't know his story. Chris flew helicopters. In Afghanistan, his Black Hawk crashed. He was stuck in the rubble, close to death. He suffered surgery after surgery after surgery when he came home. He recovered. I met him many years later, and I'll never forget one of the things that he first said to me. He said he believed that service to nation is equal to national service, but more importantly, he said, you know what I really wish? I really wish people would stop thanking me for my service. Chris wrote an article about that. And I'm going to tell you why. Organizations like Team Rubicon, Mission Continues, veteran leaders like Aaron Greitens and Chris Marvin understand what I hope every American understands. That even in our darkest hour, there remains thousands of points of light. The points of light that emanate from our veterans never fade. We have a soul of service. It endures forever, for all, and for all time. So I just ask every American that's watching this today, don't thank us for our service. When we come home, say, welcome home. We still need you. Are you ready to serve again? Thank you.